Now, Jimmy, I know you're seeing something a little different. I promise you that's not my quality here in the studio. The audience will be seeing something different, but I got my webcam for you and then the camera for the other people. So,
Okay.
all right, just wanted to let you know that. I got a bunch of questions for you. Oh, also, how long do you have? We doing 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours?
Uh, Let me see. So I have to be somewhere at 11.
Done. Not a problem. I got you. I
Okay.
got a bunch of questions. All right, first off, you spoke at the UN, and that is a pretty monumental thing. That's right up there with Dick Gregory showing Geraldo Rivera those Kennedy tapes. So that's like a huge thing. What was that like for you?
So, I originally said no. I turned it down the invitation because I was on vacation and I don't get, even on my vacations, I end up working all the time. So, I ended up working on this one. And so, I knew I was going to have to write the speech and that was going to take me probably half a day of intense writing and then, all that stuff. So at first I said no. And then I thought about it and I decided, okay, I'll do it, right? Because it's important. I thought it was important. And that, guys like Julian Assange have paid much bigger price than me just having my vacation interrupted. So I decided to do it. And it was really kind of surreal to see, they have me, I was in Italy at the time. And so they had it projected on that huge screen and it was what was wild. And I, it was also exhilarating to be able to speak that kind of truth. And the thing is, I knew that everybody sitting there, I addressed the Security Council.
Yeah,
And so I knew that everyone there knew what I was saying was true. And I knew that they had to, but some of them had to push propaganda, right? Like the United States and the
of course.
UK and Germany and people like that. They had to. So uh, it was exhilarating. It was fun. I got my phone hacked afterwards because of it, but I guess kind of a small price to pay. Yeah, they got into my iCloud. I got a when I was on the plane, I got a message that said MacBook the is now in control of your iCloud account. And I was like, what? So I called my IT guy when I got off the plane, and he's former military intelligence, and he gets hired by countries to help to try to hack into their systems to find their vulnerabilities. And so I told him what had happened, and he said, "Oh my God!" He said, "Jimmy, even I couldn't do that. It's supposed to be two-factor authentication. How'd they get around that?" And so he didn't know. And then I said, I guess I shouldn't have given that speech at the UN. And then he laughed. And I said, no, I really gave a speech at the UN. And he was like, oh yeah, that did it. And he said this was definitely a nation state. And he said they used the software that the Mossad invented. So it could be them too. So um that and at the same time I was being invited to by billionaires to join a secret club. And so that was the carrot and the stick at the same time. So it finally happened. I'd always kind of joked about it. Why hasn't anyone come for me? Why hasn't anyone ever made it? I mean, YouTube has come for me, but they come for a lot of people. Um, so that was my experience. It was well worth it. It was exhilarating to tell the truth on a global scale about what the United States terrorism organization and NATO, which is what they are. They're terrorist organizations. They're the biggest terrorist organizations ever, which is what always makes me laugh when I hear Bill Maher and not Steve, and Sam Harris talk about how the worst thing in the world is Islamists, and we have to fear Muslims. And I'm like, well, Muslims didn't blow up Nevada, Nebraska, Colorado, and Arkansas. That's what we did to the equivalent in the Middle East, right? So we went over there, and it was all pre-planned, right? So if you know anything about the prospect for a new American century, which was this document that the neocons invented before 9/11, It was a plan to invade seven Muslim countries and overthrow their governments, install puppet regimes, and steal their natural resources and try to control the world. And they said in order to do that, what they needed was a Pearl Harbor. And lo and behold, 9/11 happened, and it was their Pearl Harbor. We now know Building 7 was for sure blown up. It didn't fall down because a plane hit another building, which was always ridiculous. And most people don't even know that there was a Building 7. So that's some part of the corporate media's job is to push propaganda, and part of it is to ignore the truth. And so that's the part where that they ignore. So people don't even know about Building 7, and they don't know that it wasn't hit by a plane, and they don't know that it fell into its own footprint, a metal building that again has never happened before or since from a fire. And the NIST's own models that showed how it supposedly happened, the way the government wants you to think it happens, were fake and phony. And I just debunked that on my show a couple of weeks ago with the head engineering professor from the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and his specialty is to investigate how buildings collapse. That's his that's his specialty. And he showed me that. He said, well, he showed a model. Here's the NIST's model of Building 7. Here's how they said it fell. And they said it fell like this, like in like kind of like a loaf of bread. But if you look at the photos, it didn't fall like that. It fell like this. And so even their own model is bullshit. So anyway, so we're the terrorists. I've been saying that for quite a while. I got to say that on Tucker Carlson's show when he was on Fox News, that your enemy is not China, your enemy is not Russia, your enemy is the military industrial complex who's been fleecing American treasury for trillions of dollars. And two times in my lifetime, the Pentagon said they can't find a couple $1 trillion. Can't even find it. Not that they're spending it, but they can't even find it. And it was weird that that plane hit the part of the Pentagon where the offices were supposedly looking for how they lost that $2 trillion that the day before Donald Rumsfeld had announced that they couldn't find. So, and then,
You're about to get my phone hacked, sir.
and I'm just these. So these are just facts. These are this is no conspiracy involved here. These are just straight facts. And by the way, 9/11 was a conspiracy. And so what I tell people is that, people are charged with conspiracies in courtrooms every day across this country because conspiracies are real, and all it means is two people colluding to do a crime. That's what a conspiracy is, right? And so there was certainly more than two people involved in 9/11. So they used they weaponized that term conspiracy after it's been around forever. But after the JFK assassination, the CIA really wanted to overdrive it. Anybody who had a question about the fact that the CIA did it, which they did, they would call you a conspiracy theorist, and that was equivalent to being a tinfoil hat maniac. Well, now the government's admitting that UFOs exist, which is another story. But so that whole tinfoil thing is also crazy.
I gotta
But
ask you about that when it comes to the UFOs, because this morning I saw Tucker on your show. I saw Alex Jones do a whole huge rant. I think it was it felt like 10 to 15 minutes of him ranting about what he feels all that is. You didn't get to touch on it that much in the clip. What do you think about everything that's going on with these UFOs? And all of a sudden they're being very honest with us about all of this.
so I remember the last time I was on Joe Rogan, he had just had someone on before me talking about UFOs, and he was like, "No," and I was like, "Yeah, I know, Joe. Why do you think they're telling you about this?" And he thought I was trying to debunk that UFOs exist, and he said, "No, this Navy pilot, he's real and he's credible, and he saw this thing." And I'm like, "They've been seeing things since we started flying, since human beings invented planes. Pilots have been reporting stuff like this, and they've always discounted it, and no one's given it press time, and they've said that they saw something else or they were crazy." So why now? Why now would the government agencies start confirming that these sightings are real? And it's because they want to spend a couple of $1 trillion on a space force. That's why. And so now it's useful to them to admit that these things are real and that it's unexplainable, and they're willing to talk about it. So because we live, our country is the most. I say it's the most corrupt. They say Ukraine is the most corrupt country in Europe. We're certainly the most corrupt country in the Western Hemisphere because our whole country is run on corruption. The reason why we can send $115 billion to Ukraine at the blink of an eye, meanwhile, there's people living under every bridge in our own country, which just a fraction of that money we sent to Ukraine would fix. And the reason why that is because the only thing that greases the wheels of the government and spending in America is called corruption. And so if something's happening, it's because of corruption. And the people who run this country don't care about those homeless people because they don't care about this country. Just like Ned Beatty said in the movie A Network in 1974, there are no countries anymore. There are only companies and the international transfer of dollars. And that's all that matters. So when they say that Donald Trump and MAGA are trying to start a civil war in this country, what that means is the billionaire class that owns the media and the all the corporations and our government, they would like a civil war because chaos always favors the establishment. And a civil war, whatever their accusation is, it's a confession of what they're doing. Just like when they say Donald Trump, if he gets reelected, he's gonna criminalize his political opposition. Well, that's exactly what they're doing right now. Not only to Donald Trump and MAGA, but they're doing it to anybody like a far leftist, right? Like for instance, the people who are protesting the expansion of the police state in Atlanta, Stop Cop City, they used the exact same RICO statute, the exact same grand jury to indict those people as they used to indict Donald Trump. And so when I pointed that out to Cornell West, he pretended he didn't understand that. He pretended he was a dumber. When it suits him, he's a Harvard professor. And when it doesn't suit him, when it threatens his position in shit lib society, he pretends he's dumber than a pothead comedian, which is what he did on my show. What an embarrassing. And if you see that boy, what an and by the way, he's been persona non grata ever since that interview.
I'll be honest. When it comes to Cornell West, I've never been a fan. I didn't like when I heard he was running for president, that he was doing that. I see him as one of those people. I don't know. There's a lot of, and I'm black, so I can say it. There's a lot of people in the black community who are severely compromised, and they have no intention of really helping their people. They're kind of just helping themselves. And you can kind of see that over the last, I don't know, I want to say 50 years. They haven't really done much, but they are kind of, living in ivory towers, as it may. And, the black community is kind of just up shit's creek from what I can see,
Well, that's exactly. So when I made that point to Cornell about, do you see the game they're playing right now when they're using the same RICO statute and the same grand jury to indict Stop Cop City protesters, which I know Cornell cares about, and they're using that same one to go after Donald Trump in the January. And his response to that was, "I think you like Donald Trump more than you let on, Jimmy. How could you compare them to Donald Trump?" And I was just like, "Wow, you're pretending to be dumber than me." And so I wonder. So that's what his response was, and that's when I realized, oh, this guy, of course, he's lived in ivory towers his entire life, whereas I haven't. I was a bricklayer, I was a forklift driver, I've loaded UPS trucks, and then I was a stand-up comedian, which is the most blue collar thing you can do in show business. And so I'm the one who's actually connected to workers, not him. He lives again in an ivory tower with his Harvard salary, and even though anyway. So I don't want to make this interview about him, but it was one of the biggest political disappointments of my life, just like Bernie Sanders was. And so it's hard for me to shake it, and it's hard for me to really kind of integrate what happened in that interview into my psyche. It was kind of devastating to me, and Wow, what a complete joke that he turned out to be.
I have myself again. We won't focus on him, but I wasn't surprised. I thought it would be the same thing. You know, you'd see the same thing if you talk to Al Sharpton or any of these so-called black leaders in the community. So I
Well,
wasn't too surprised.
When Al Sharpton got his job at MSNBC, you knew that the co-optation from the establishment to Al Sharpton was complete, right? So we know from Noam Chomsky and Ed Herman, who wrote Manufacturing Consent, which was before the Telecommunications Act of 1996. But when they wrote that, it explained that how the corporate media, when you watch it, they're not there to inform you. They're not there to tell you the truth. They're there to manufacture consent for who? Their owners. Who are the owners? The billionaires. That's the donor class. And that's the same donor class that owns Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the Democratic Party, and by the way, Mitch McConnell and the Republican Party. And that whenever somebody stands up to that donor class, they first say that they're a pedophile. That's did it to Julian Assange. They did it to Matt Getz. And now they're doing it to Russell Brand. They're doing it to anybody who stands up and tells the truth about the donor class. That's the first line of defense is you call them a rapist, you call them a pedophile, and then the second one is you try to discredit them. And the third is you demonetize them. And that's exactly so. Uh, that's what's going on. So when Al Sharpton got his job by the establishment, that's when you knew he was full of shit for sure. And the co-optation of Al Sharpton was 100% complete. He's there to push propaganda and manufacture consent for the billionaire class, the same billionaire class that told you that you could buy that crushed your economy during COVID, that just collapsed it, did a controlled demolition of the working class during COVID, while they made a couple of billionaires and a handful of millionaires into billionaires during that same time. So Bill Gates didn't suffer under the lockdowns. Bill Gates invested $55 million into BioNTech Pfizer right before COVID, and then he cashed it out for $500 million. So he made $500 million during COVID, or half a billion, which is more money than everybody in the world will see. So in their lifetime, and then as soon as he cashed out, he started shitting on the vaccine, saying that it wasn't good, it didn't block infection, it wasn't long lasting, and there were lots of problems with it. But so this new thing though is that this nasal inhaler, that's the thing. And then why is he pushing that? Because he's also the guy invested in that. So
Yeah, it's a chilling thing with him. And well, I should say with you and Tucker Carlson. You guys were talking about Bill Gates and the people who control things, and I'm kind of lumping it all in with everything you just said. You were asking Tucker, what are you going to do when they come for you? And I would ask you the same question. What are you going to do when they come for you with everything that you're saying and not being afraid to speak like you are right now?
well, I can tour as a stand-up comedian, and I have Rumble. So that's really my only backup. And I'm gonna put my savings into gold. So that's true. We saw what happened with the Canadian truckers, and that's the new thing, right? So they call you it. So when Barack Obama signed the NDA, and it was 2011 on New Year's Eve, yeah, New Year's Eve, Section 1021, it got rid of habeas corpus, and so you know they don't have to give you a trial now, so the government can just detain you. They call it indefinite detention, and they don't have to give you a trial, and which is basically what they're doing to Julian Assange, right? And so the habeas corpus, I try to remind people, was in the Magna Carta. So they repealed the Magna Carta. So now we're operating on a liberty view from somewhere around the 1100s, that in the United States. And so all they have to do is say you're a terrorist, and they can lock you up, freeze your assets, and never give you a trial. That's I thought what 1776 was to fight against. But anyway, that's where we are right now. So all they have to do is call you a terrorist. So now the new form of terrorism, this is real, is that if you spread misinformation According to the government, if you spread misinformation online, that's called cyber terrorism. That's it. You're a terrorist. They can shut off your funds, throw you in jail. So if you wanted to protest a pipeline they would call you an environmental terrorist. They
Well,
already did.
not just misinformation, malinformation, which is
Mal
a little different, because malinformation is things that could be true but could be damaging. So
Right.
that's where it really gets a little more
Mal
Orwellian.
yeah, malinformation is truth someone tells that hurts the establishment's narrative. And they call that malinformation. So this is really Orwellian. This is Brave New World and 1984 combined. This is what I thought was Soviet era Russia that people lived under. So that's the difference between the United States and people who grew up during Soviet era Russia or live in China. in in China and the old Soviet Union, those people knew when they saw the news it was propaganda. In the United States, they really think they're getting the truth. I mean, can't tell you how many Christmas parties I went to where people would just repeat back what Rachel Maddow said or Sean Hannity said about Ukraine war or about COVID or masks or vaccines as if it was real. And I'm like, where did you hear that? They said, oh, on the news, Jimmy. Don't you watch the news? I go, oh, you're watching. This is a quote I heard at a Christmas party. They go, oh, you're just watching all that liberal claptrap. Someone said to someone. They go, someone said, I watch both channels. Like that was, I swear to God. I watch both channels. So that means they're informed because they watch Fox News and MSNBC. Who do you think owns both those? It's the same donor class that hates you, hates Stop Cop City, did COVID lockdowns, did the Ukraine war, is criminalizing their political opponents. That's the same people own those two channels. You're never going to get the truth. That's, again, manufacturing consent. Those people aren't there. You don't get fired like Tucker Carlson, right? And I would have to explain to people. They go, yeah, but Jimmy, I really hate that Tucker Carlson. He's disgusting. I go, why do you think he got fired? I go, he didn't get fired for lying or for all the disgusting things you think he said. He got fired because he started telling the truth. You don't get fired in corporate news for lying. You get a promotion. Rachel Maddow pushed the debunked hoax called Russiagate that was perpetrated on America by the Clinton campaign, the FBI, and the CIA. And what was her punishment for that? Her punishment was she got a $35 million contract. She gets paid $100,000 a day. That was her punishment for doing that, right?
Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing. So you
Wow.
don't get fired for lying. You get in trouble for telling the truth. Edward Snowden has to live in Russia not because he lied, but because he told the truth. Julian Assange is in a Belmarsh prison not because he lied, but because he told the truth. Tucker Carlson got fired, the number one newsman in America. They fired him. Why? Not because he lied, but because he told the truth about Ukraine. He told the truth about Syria. He told the truth about American imperialism. And he told the truth about COVID. And he brought on RFK Jr. to tell you the truth about big pharma and vaccines. And that was the final straw. And they got rid of him. Not because he lied about any of those things, but because he told the truth about them. And he's the only one with the balls in corporate media to tell the truth. And of course, the corporate media is going to demonize Tucker Carlson as the worst guy in the world because he's the one actually doing the job he's supposed to be doing, and they're not.
Well, I mean, it's the best thing in the world for people looking for truth that happened to Tucker Carlson. Especially now that he has his whole network up and running, he's gonna have other voices on there. I really think that's gonna lead to some amazing stuff. I think he's gonna surpass CNN rather quickly if he hasn't already in terms
Oh,
of
of
like
course,
daily
I've
watchers.
surpassed
Like,
CNN. I've surpassed CNN. I'm not kidding. I get more. My show gets more views than CNN shows do. That's their, yeah, those, yeah. So of course, the CNN and MSNBC are yesterday, but they still control the narratives just because it's in collusion with every other thing, right? So every newspaper, every magazine, every TV news show, every radio show that you hear or see is owned and controlled by the same six companies in America, right? So there's only six media companies in America. And how did that happen? That happened thanks to Bill Clinton and the Telecommunications Act in 1996. We used to have 50 giant media companies in America And then they got whittled it down to six. That's where we are. So now everybody who works in media basically works for the same handful of billionaires, and they know, as manufacturing consent taught us, that they know what they can say and what they can't say. They know they self-censor more than they get. It's not overt censorship. It's just they know what's going to get printed, and they know what's not going to get printed, and they know what's going to make the air, and they know what's not going to make the air. And so they fulfill that requirement, right? Just like Cornell West was afraid to tell the truth about Stop Cop City in relationship to the establishment prosecuting their political enemies with vis-a-vis Donald Trump, MAGA, January 6th, and Stop Cop City. He knew what he was allowed to say and what he couldn't. He knew what he could say and still get a book deal. He knew what he could say and couldn't say and still get invited on CNN and MSNBC. He knew what he could say and couldn't say and still get invited to give speeches for $50,000 at a pop. He knew. And so he didn't need someone there over his shoulder on my show to tell him what to say and what not to. He intrinsically knew that he had to lie and play dumb, dumber than a pothead comedian, or else he would lose his spot in polite society. And he is not willing to risk that. In fact, he's there to prop up the establishment, which is why he won't call Joe Biden a fascist. Even as he's committing a genocide in Palestine, he refers to him as a milquetoast neoliberal, which talk about milquetoast. That's exactly what Cornel West is.
You and Cornel West are gonna have it out in a debate or something
I already
soon.
had it out with them. You should go
I
watch
know.
my show. He humiliated himself.
I really, again, like I watch every single thing that you guys do, but as soon as I saw Cornel West, I was like, I'm gonna skip that one because I knew what he was gonna say. I know what that guy's about from the first day I heard him running for president. I was like, I know exactly what this is gonna be.
And they didn't care about it's not only him, but it's a good example. There's this class of PMC, professional managerial class, and they want you to still think that fascism is something that's coming to America down the road, and that you have to vote for Democrats to preserve democracy. We don't live in a democracy, right? So that's the first lie. We live in an oligarchy. Your democracy was stolen from you decades and decades ago by corporations who bought our government and infiltrated our regulatory agencies. So we now live in an oligarchy, which is why workers haven't had a real raise since 1980. And so we don't live. So this whole idea that you have to vote to protect democracy is the first lie. The second lie is that if Donald Trump regains power again, somehow fascism will come to America, or a form of Christian fascism will come to America. Fascism already came to America. We're living in fascism. I already told you Barack Obama repealed habeas corpus. And then we lived through COVID, which was the most authoritarian fascist thing I'd ever seen. Workers were fired by the tens of thousands. 70,000 healthcare workers in one state alone, in New York State, were fired. Healthcare workers who just months earlier were being heralded as our heroes, but as soon as they didn't fulfill the agenda of the donor class, which was big pharma, they got fired. And did you hear Cornel West screaming about that? No, he cares about the least amongst us and the workers, and he stands in solidarity with the workers. He can give a fuck about the workers during COVID. Fascism already came to America, and because it didn't serve his class or his personal agenda, Cornel West ignored it. It's here. It happened, fuckface, and you're too cowardly to deal with it head on. Well, I'm not, because guess what? I'm from the working class. I was in the working class my entire fucking life. I was in three unions. I was a forklift driver. I was a bricklayer. I was worked for UPS. I was a stand-up comedian. I was in SAG. I was in AFTRA. I'm actually a union worker. I'm actually a blue-collar guy. My whole life I lived that way. I'm of the working class, not ivory tower people like Cornel West.
I got one on you in terms of blue collar stuff in media. I worked locations for years. I was on movie sets working
Uh-huh.
locations. So
Okay.
I was basically the janitor on movie sets. It was terrible. But before that, it was all working class stuff, and I'm still a part of Antifa doing rigging and, set deck and stuff like that. So, yeah, I feel you in terms of the working class stuff. I only just moved into media, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years ago.
Now,
After
what do you say to people who say that Antifa is I used to be a big Antifa supporter, And then I realized that the game being played is that they're
Oh,
infiltrating.
wait, I didn't mean Antifa. No, I meant what's that union? Ah, why can't I even remember it? I'm part of the
AFL-CIO?
No, the other one. Uh oh man, it's been so long since I even had to go there.
Oh,
It's
you
not.
can't remember. Oh, so you didn't mean Antifa.
No, no. I'm
Okay, well,
definitely not part of Antifa.
good thing
Holy
I
fuck.
corrected you then. Jesus Christ.
That's so fucking funny. No,
No, I
no,
think
the where you do set deck and you have to join a union to be a part of set
okay.
deck. I forget what it's called. So crazy.
Okay.
I'll have to
So
look that
yeah, I
up.
mean, when you see Antifa, I mean, ideally, why wouldn't you be against fascism? They're anti-fascist. That's what it says for. But it's the, just like on January 6th, they're flooded with feds, right? And you see, whenever you see those the Patriot Front, those guys in their khakis and their hoods, uh, those aren't real people. Those are feds, right? They're there to make you. So there's a whole, just like I'm convinced that all those Black Lives Matter protests that happened were instigated by the deep state, right? And what you saw pallets of bricks being left in the middle of cities
I
on.
I went and filmed that. I went and found, like, I actually found pallets of bricks, not just pallets of bricks, pallets of rocks. And I was
Uh-huh.
wondering what this is, and there was no construction around. I was seeing that. I went to about 20 different protests because I wanted to understand how they turned violent. I guess the ones I went to were kind of small, so they didn't. But it always kind of turned that way, and there would always be somebody who wasn't black, who was an organizer. They would be there, and I would talk to them, but maybe an hour, 30 minutes into the protest, they would leave. They would disappear. And then all of a sudden, these people who were completely just all masked up, they started leading the chants, and they would be in that same type of, the high boots and all black and everything like that. They would lead the chants. They would be the ones kind of leading everything, and then it would turn a little bit violent. And then if the police stepped in at the proper time, it could kind of get neutralized. But I found that very interesting in these protests. And honestly, at the beginning of that whole thing, there were security experts talking about how all of this stuff going on couldn't just be natural by people just going wild. It looked too organized. There was many security experts who talked about the tactics they were using were very professional. They would move here, there'd be fire there, then all of a sudden they'd move here. It was almost like they were flanking in a certain respect. So there was a lot of that at the beginning. I just want to say it was IATSE. I meant IATSE, not Antifa.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's much better.
Yeah.
So, if you see, so what, so, the Xi Jinping came to San Francisco a couple weeks ago, and Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, somehow was able to clean up homelessness in San Francisco when he made that trip. And that's not an accusation. That he admitted saying that people brought that up to him at a press conference, and they said, "Is that true?" And he says, "Yes, it's true because it's true," which is a weird way to say it, but he said that.
Yeah, he
And
said you got to clean up. You got to clean up when you have guests over.
yeah,
He actually
and
said that.
I know. So, my point was a couple years ago, Gavin Newsom said that California had a budget surplus of $40 billion. And I was like, oh, great. They're going to fix healthcare. They're going to provide infrastructure and probably education for everybody. And they didn't do any of that stuff. They didn't fix homelessness. They didn't give us healthcare. So that's enough money they say you could end homelessness in America for $20 billion. Well, 40 billion could have done it for
Now,
sure in
now,
California.
I
Well, let's
heard
just say
you.
that's true. Let's just say that's true. I don't want to debate the numbers, but
No,
they
no.
certainly have resources to do it, but they won't do it. Why won't they fix homelessness, coach? Why won't they do that?
Well, I
And
heard on Tucker Carlson, I actually wanted to ask you guys about this because you guys talked about it at length. And I think the same reason that we're seeing movies like Civil War that just came out is the exact same reason you guys were giving because you were talking about them keeping people on edge.
that's
And
right.
I liken it to actually they want to show people the worst case scenario. In this movie, they're showing you the worst case scenario when it comes to your neighbor. They're not making it about the elite in the Civil War. It's about your neighbor and the Trumpers and this person and
Right.
that person. It's about your neighbor. So what they're showing you when there's homelessness everywhere, it's like, yeah, you might feel like you have it bad, but look at Tent City over there. You're not in Tent City. You don't have
That's
it that
right.
bad. You don't look at the fecal matter on the ground everywhere you go. You don't have it that bad. You don't want to push it and get to that point, do you? You actually have it pretty good, don't you? They're kind of showing you the worst case scenario everywhere you go. I think that's what it is towards what you guys were saying about keeping people on edge.
You're correct. And there was also, I'm blanking on his name, but a Scottish broadcaster talked about this. And he said that people who are on edge are meant to be kept on edge. And so that's what they want you. And Tucker Carlson made the point on my show that why is it when I go to a Target or a store, a grocery, I have to, first of all, I have to step over a homeless person. And when I get inside, everything's locked up behind glass cages. And then when I leave, I got a guy on meth screaming at me all the way to my car. And so why is that, right? And that is so to make you feel on edge and then welcome authoritarianism. And that's what this is
Yes.
all about. So you'll just like after 9/11, people were like, "Hey, we're going to take away your Fourth Amendment rights to privacy and security and your papers." And they're like, "Okay, I don't care. Yeah, if it stops another 9/11, go ahead." And so that's exactly what this is. That's how they use fear. They want to keep you on edge so that you will accept this increasing authoritarian government. They'll let you do that. You will let them do lockdowns. They'll let them take your job away. And so now, there was the craziest thing during the lockdowns was that I made this point that I couldn't go. There was a sporting goods store on the corner of where I lived in Pasadena. And I was like, I can't go in there and buy a baseball mitt for my nephew even though there's only one person that works in that store, right? And that's because of COVID and spreading. But I could order it from Amazon that had 1,000 people working inside a fulfillment center. You tell me that what kind of logical sense that makes to fight a virus. It doesn't. That didn't make sense. That was just them seeing if people would take it, and people would take. So if they scared you enough, people would accept that. Right? So the sporting goods stores should close, but guess what wasn't? Ralph's, Target wasn't, Walmart wasn't, and Amazon. Isn't that weird? So this is the game they're playing. You really have to see that this is the game they're playing. And it really is. I mean, in 1974, they were putting it in Hollywood movies that there are no countries, there are only companies and the international transfer of dollars. If you think that a session of Congress, so this whole thing, people go, oh, Jimmy, you're so conspiratorial. You think that the billionaire class is conspiring together to screw over worker. When do they have these meetings? Well, first of all, they don't have them in secret. It's called a session of Congress. When those people get together, who do you think the bidding they're doing? Do you think they're doing the bidding of railroad workers? Do you think they're doing the bidding of Uber drivers? Do you think they're doing the bidding of bricklayers and checkout people at a grocery store? They're doing the bidding of the donor class, which is the international billionaires. That's the meeting, and that's when they get there to plan everything, and that's when they decide to send $113 billion at the blink of an eye to the military-industrial complex money laundering organization called the Ukraine War. It's not a war; it's a money laundering organization operation. And so that's the meeting. There's another meeting called Davos and the WEF. They do this all out in the open. And the one that's left in secret is the Bilderberg meeting. But I don't know why they even do that in secret anymore, because everybody knows where they're doing it all the time. Yeah, they are having meetings. They do get together. Their interests coincide, and it's against us, the working class, the masses, and that's why they want to have control of digital currency. They don't want any more cash dollars so they can track you. I saw a thing that in one European country, I think it was Germany, that if you want to do a transaction with cash over $1,000, you'll be considered a criminal.
Yeah, the gray zone. It's the gray zone. You're not allowed to be trading money, and they call it the gray zone. It's very,
Okay.
very interesting what they're doing. And, it's going to start. It's happened in, I think, Nigeria. It's happened in a few places, more places than people think. Like, I want to say about 20 all around the world. Amazon, or sorry, I should say Whole Foods, which is Amazon. They're starting something called Amazon One. It's like a palm type of reader. So you have to go into
Yes.
Whole Foods. You have to have your palm read. You go in there, you get all your stuff. In order to leave and to pay, you got to have your palm read. So now Amazon's going to have 40 million people's palm prints as well as their house prints, because that's what Roombas do. They just bought that Roomba, that technology.
Yeah.
Roombas go around and they record the layout of your house. So
No
now they got,
kidding.
yeah. Look into that technology. It's very, very interesting. So,
So I just went to I went to see the Clippers play the Miami Heat on New Year's Day. And so I wanted to go get an iced tea and a bag of popcorn. And so they have these little carousels set out, and you have to take your credit card, you stick it in so you can walk in. So I stuck it in, it reads your credit card, and then you walk in and you grab whatever you want and you just walk out. And I was like, what? There's no cashier. There's no, I go, how do they know what I bought? They go, oh, they're tracking you. What? So they know that I picked up an iced tea, I picked up some peanut M&Ms and M's and a bag of popcorn, and I just walked out and they knew what I grabbed.
yeah,
I, the
that's how it
technology,
works at the Amazon. That, like,
they,
as you're putting
yeah,
it in, it's scanning everything that you're putting into your cart.
I didn't even put it into my car. I just grabbed it. I didn't have a cart. It was in my hands. So, and then they also have technology that reads your brain at work. Not kidding, your thoughts. It reads your thoughts.
Oh yeah,
So it
China's experimenting with something like that with the kids. They have something where it actually shows if you're not focused on what the teacher's saying, the teacher will know and they'll
yeah.
bring you back to focus. It's actually a trial that they've put out into China quite a bit because of course that's where you start that type of thing.
Well, the WEF is where I found out about it. They have a video telling them how it works, and that this is the way they couch it. They go, well, it's here. Not like, well, is this good or bad? Should we have it? Should we? They're like, well, it's here. So that we have now we just have to live with it because it's here. And I didn't hear about that from China. I heard about that from Klaus Schwab and the WEF, which is who really rules over you. Right now on YouTube, I'm not allowed to say anything about medical medicine or healthcare that contradicts the WHO. Who is the WHO? They're an unelected body of bureaucrats. And so, how do they get their jobs? They get their jobs because the billionaire class, the same billionaire class that owns the media and owns our government, owns the WHO. How do I know this? Because the former head of the WHO said we have to go around the world begging for donations so we can fund our organization called the WHO. And when people donate to us in large sums, we have to do what they say. That's not me making that up. That's what the former head of the WHO said. So now who is the number one funder of the WHO? It is Bill Gates. Bill Gates through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and through Gavi, which is another NGO that he set up. He runs that Gavi and the Bill. So they donate more money or as much money to the WHO as China does. And so that's one billionaire controlling what everybody can say on YouTube, which is the only place that you could get an antidote to the corporate media, but now you can't because they're controlling you. And so this is the world we're living in, and people still think they're getting the news from Jeff Bezos' Washington Post. They still think they're getting the news from the New York Times. They still think that NBC, CNN, and Fox News are giving you the news. No, if someone at any of those outlets gave you the news, they would be fired immediately.
Yeah, fired immediately. And I want to go back to what you're talking about with Gavin Newsom really quick. When you talk about that $40 billion surplus, right? What do you think would happen to him if he decided to be the Tucker Carlson of governors? And he said, you know
Uh-huh.
what? I am going to solve homelessness throughout all of America. I'm going to do it right now. What do you think? I think he would get shot. I think he'd be done.
Yeah, well, they would. So just like they did to the attorney general in Texas. So a couple of months ago, a news story came across my desk that they're trying to impeach the attorney general of Texas. And I thought that was odd, but I was like, well, I'm not going to cover that because, my show is nationwide, worldwide, and nobody cares about an attorney general in one state. And then I found out a couple months, just recently, I found out why they were doing that. Well, the attorney general, so he survived it. They didn't impeach him. I never heard of that, by the way, impeaching an attorney general of a state, but they tried it. And then I found out why, because just recently, the attorney general of Texas filed a lawsuit against Pfizer for false advertising for their COVID vaccines, saying that they overstated the efficacy. They used bogus data to deceive people about how the vaccine worked, which they did. They used a thing called relative risk instead of absolute risk. So when they said it's 95% effective, that was a very bogus figure that they used. Turns out it wasn't, it was 0% because everybody who got the vaccine that I know got COVID. So this idea that it was 95% effective against transmission and contraction was a bogus lie. It doesn't stop transmission and contraction, but according to YouTube, you have to say that it slows the transmission and contraction and it will keep you from getting seriously ill, hospitalized, or death. Now, I just said that in case your show's on YouTube, so now they won't take your channel down. So,
Well, I just have to ask really quick. Are you going to go to that gentleman's funeral? Do you have time to go out to Texas for his funeral at all?
I just had a guy on my show called Dr. Rob Epstein, and I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but he has proven, scientifically proven, that Google, through their algorithms and their propaganda, is swinging elections. And it seems pretty incontrovertible, his data. And so what he is shown is that they give these vote reminders that they send people, uh, hey, make sure you vote. And I go, well, what's wrong with that? How could that be considered swing? He goes, they don't send it to everybody. They only send it to people who they think are going to vote for Democrats. And I'm like, you're kidding. He goes, yes, that's what so they do. And then of course they skew like I was trying to find an article on the Cleveland Clinic study on boosters. And so if you Google it, it doesn't come up. Like all these articles come up saying how great boosters are. And you get a couple articles that say that the Cleveland Clinic study was bogus, even though it's the Cleveland Clinic. And that's how they do it. So they've been shown to be able to swing. Who they target are the people who are undecided, the independent voters, the people who are undecided, and they target them with that kind of propaganda, with those kind of vote things, and they've been proven they could swing it. And he's got data that shows that the 2020 election, all these elections, and he's got the data have been not only influenced but corrupted by Google and their algorithms. And he's got the data. And when he had 3 senators contact Google about it, he said they immediately stopped doing 2 or 3 different of those propaganda techniques that he had identified. And I was like, wow, no kidding. And this is the brave new world. This is 1984. You think your thoughts are your own. They're not. They're being heavily influenced by cyber bureaucrats who are in control of the algorithms, and they know exactly what they're doing. I know that my show is being suppressed. I know that I'm on some kind of algorithm that unsubscribes people from my channel to keep my growth low.
I got a lot of that after with what happened with Russell Brand. I started doing a lot of coverage on it. I made like 5 videos in a week about it, and then right away, because the channel usually gets like 3 million views a month, and then right away it went down to like 500,000. And I couldn't get past 80,000 subscribers.
Right.
And I was like, huh, interesting. Like it just kept staying very, like it was
That's
really
right.
weird. It just completely is like, it's a switch. They got a switch. They can switch you on, switch you off.
Meanwhile, they artificially boost channels like the Young Turks, right? Because they're funded by the donor class. Jeffrey Katzenberg gave them $20 million. So
I really do wonder about those very left-leaning channels and the things they post, because I know when I post a certain title, they'll be like, oh, this is limited. I know when I say certain things, it gets limited. I wonder if when they say fuck Trump and they have like a title like that, I wonder if anything happens. I wonder if they ever get limited for anything they say.
So I just have a bone to pick with the kind of language of they're left-leaning. They're not left. Left is supposed to be anti-war, pro-worker, anti-establishment, my body, my choice, bodily autonomy. The Young Turks are none of those things. They are completely authoritarian establishment fucks. They're not left.
But that's
They're
what the
Democrat.
That's what the left is now. That's what it seems like.
But that's not the left. They're now. That's not left.
Well, let me ask you about that, because that was one of the
That's not
questions that I
left.
had. Because
That's
for the
Democrats.
I
Those are
understand. I
Democrats.
understand. For the longest time, that is what the left stood for. It's well, it didn't stand for that. It stand for
So
freedom
at
of
least
speech.
it still
But
does.
my,
The
but
left still, I'm a lefty. I'm still
but
for freedom of speech. I'm still for my bodily autonomy, my body, my choice. I'm still anti-war. I'm still pro-worker. I'm still pro-union. They are none of those things.
but
Young
the
Turks are
people.
union fucking busters. They're
Well,
always pro-war. They were for lockdowns. They're for mandates. They're for
I'm just
big
saying
pharma.
the younger generation of the left is for all those things.
But they're
They
not
are for
left.
anti.
Just saying
Who?
that doesn't make them left.
What are they then? What are they then?
They're
Because that.
right-wing authoritarians. That's what they are. They're establishment authoritarians.
Okay,
They're
move
not
away
left.
from the Young Turks, because I'm talking about the younger left-leaning people. Like
What
the
is that? What do
left.
you mean by left-leaning? What do they? What makes them left-leaning?
Well, the fact that they're liberal. I'll go exactly what you just said. The fact that they're Democrats, I go with them
That's
being
that. They're
left-leaning.
Democrats are authoritarian, pro-war, anti-worker party. There's
But they,
nothing.
but they
There's
didn't
nothing
use.
left about the Democrats.
But
They're
they
just
used to stand for. They used to
yeah,
stand for
but
that
I'd
type of
say they
thing.
used to, but they're not anymore. So they're
But my
not.
question is, what happened? That's what I'm trying to get through. What actually happened, and when did that switch happen?
So that happened with Bill Clinton. So that happened with Bill Clinton when he decided to take corporate money, get in bed with Wall Street, the military industrial complex, big oil, big pharma, and totally changed the Democratic Party into what used to be called the Republican Party. So now we have two right-wing parties in America. We have two. It's one government with two right wings. There's nobody out there looking out for workers. There's nobody out there that's anti-war. There's nobody out there that's pro-free speech. There's nobody out there. So if you notice, the people who are pro-abortion, they call themselves pro-abortion. They never used to do that because no one's pro-abortion. Abortion is a horrible, ugly thing. That's what you when something is turned into disgusting, you call it an abortion. So nobody is pro-abortion, but that's what they say now. And why do you think if you turn on MSNBC, CNN, and you hear someone talking about abortion rights, they say America is pro-abortion? No, it isn't. America is pro-choice. America means bodily autonomy, but they can't say they're pro-choice because they all endorsed you not having a choice when it came to a experimental medical treatment called the COVID-19 vaccine. They took your choice away, or you got fired, or
So
you
my
couldn't
my
travel, or you
question my
couldn't go
my
eat. Go
question
ahead.
to you is, are they ever when do you ever think that they are going to go back to the left as you know it, as it was when you were younger, as you feel today, like the
No,
way that you stand out? Will it ever go back to that?
I think that there are still people like that out there. They just call them right wingers now. They call they cut. So I say it there in my stand-up act. I go, I turned into a right winger because I'm anti-war, I'm pro-free speech, and I'm for bodily autonomy. Those used to be considered left-wing values. Now those Democrats call me a right winger. I didn't change; they changed, and they said the same thing about Joe Rogan, same thing about Russell Brand, same thing about Tucker Carl. If you go for something that's lefty, they call you a right winger. That's the first thing they do, which is what Cornel West did to me when I tried to explain to him that the establishment is criminalizing their political opponents, whether they be Donald Trump or Stop Cop City. And he said, "Sounds like you like Trump more than you're letting on." So he's basically calling me a right winger and a Trumper. So as soon as you get to the left of some motherfucker, some ivory tower prick like that, that's exactly what they do. They punch left. It's called hippie punching, right? So they punch left. They call you a right winger, and they never engage your argument. And so that's where so that's what I hate. It really rubs me the wrong way when people call Democrats the left. They're not the left. There's two right-wing parties in America, and they both follow the orders from the same donor class. Kamala Harris and Mitch McConnell work for the same people.
So then when you, because I've been called, I talk about what I feel the government should be doing, and I talk about what I feel is good and bad. And a lot of older people, they'll be in their 60s and 70s and they watch the channel, they'll be like, "You're not right wing," because I'll be like, "Oh, I guess I'm right." They'll be like, "You're a classic liberal." That's
That's
what
what
they'll
they
tell
call
me.
me. That's what
Yeah.
I've been told too, that I'm a classic liberal.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
okay, I'll
So
take it. So here is what you do you remember there was a band called the Sex Pistols? And here's
yeah,
what
before my time, but yeah.
well, those were real punks, right? Punk rockers. And he says, The guy John Lydon from the Sex Pistols says, I never thought I'd live to see the day when the right wing would become the cool ones, giving the middle finger to the establishment, and the left wing became the sniveling, self-righteous, twatty ones going around shaming everyone. Well, that just means they're not left wing when you're doing that. You've turned into the thing you used to criticize. So now you become this. Well, I mean, I don't even like the term left wing, right wing anymore, right? Because it doesn't mean anything. Right wing, I used to always associate with the corporation, the military industrial complex, imperialism, anti-worker, and the left wing was the antidote to that. Well, now the Democrats are that. There is no difference between the Democrats and Republicans. So they again, like if you think that Donald Trump is going to take your democracy away from you, the Democrats already did it. That's what the Twitter files revealed. They took away your freedom of speech. They squashed anybody. Barack Obama repealed habeas corpus. These are all things that Democrats did. Bill Clinton was the one who was going to get rid of Social Security, but the blowjob saved us from him getting rid of. That's the truth. And he had a secret deal with Newt Gingrich to privatize Social Security. But the next day, after he signed that deal with him, his blowjob scandal happened. He didn't have the political capital to pull that off anymore. But he did have the political capital to explode the prison population, add 100,000 cops to our streets, gut welfare. At the same time, he deregulated Wall Street, which then crashed our economy within 10 years. And who did that hurt most? Workers. That hurt workers and black and brown people way more than it hurt his professional managerial donor class.
Yeah.
So, but I have to go. I have an 11 o'clock appointment. I appreciate you having me on. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, man. Yeah, let's do it again sometime. I
Okay,
need to
good.
learn more about the left and the right. Definitely.
Okay, well, good luck with your show and thanks for having me on.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, bye-bye.